All right. So obviously, excited to have you log in with us, Joe, at your first Tour de France. I know everyone back home is super stoked that you're racing. I think you've been a pro for 10 years in Europe, and this is your first tour, so that's pretty exciting. And we probably should have done this at some of the other Grand Tours on the rest days, but I really appreciate you taking the time because I'm sure your time demands are pretty rough. We've got Chris Hayes, also someone who was integral in your development, and so I'm happy to have him here to ask questions. And I just thought we could maybe just jump right into it so we can get some insights and some context.
Yeah.
How many Grand Tours have you done?
This is my 12th Grand Tour start. I've finished. So prior to this, I had started 11, finished 10. The only one I didn't finish was last year in the Giro. I actually won stage 4, was sitting second overall. I thought I was going to take the pink jersey the next day, and then I crashed out.
Crazy.
It wasn't possible to continue. But yeah, this is number 12, which is, a lot of people, I did a number of interviews the first few days here, and people were like, how is it possible that it's your first Tour de France? You've been in the World Tour for 10 years and been a top climber for a long time. But I've always, the Giro is a race that I really love, and it's a race that really suits me. So I've kind of built that as like a focal point in the first part of my season.
Yeah.
And with that, doing the Giro Tour double, which is what I'm doing now, is not certainly not easy. And it just had never really been in the plan. But then actually the last week of the Giro, I was riding strong there, and the team asked if I wanted to do the Tour as well. And we kind of decided, if I wasn't too tired coming out of the Giro, that then I would just stay at home for 4 weeks and then do the Tour as well.
Awesome. Is there anything different about the Tour so far compared to the other Grand Tours? Because I know you've done the Vuelta and the Giro. Is it really like another level?
I think what I would say, the difference that you notice is, I don't think from like a racing level perspective there's a whole lot of difference. Save for a couple guys like Roglic and Pogacar, I would say most of your GC top 10 looks more or less the same as any other. So I don't think necessarily the racing level is different. But there's definitely, in the first week of any Grand Tour, there's a lot of stress in the peloton, because the GC hasn't really been established yet, and it's really easy for teams that have come with a GC objective to lose everything for, something other than just legs, whether it's a crash or misplaced in a stage where there's crosswind, or in 2 days we do the cobbles, some of the sectors from Roubaix. So yeah, it's just really nervous in the bunch, and you saw, if you were watching on TV already, the first 2 days, there's a lot of crashes. And that's just because, no one breaks. We ride super close. And, it is the biggest race in the world, and there's a lot to play for. So
people are willing to risk it.
That, and the other thing I will say that you notice is, while it's not necessarily a different level, I don't think, from the racing perspective, the way the race is followed on a global scale, I would say is different. Just even from like messages from friends back home, people that are following the race, I would say it's more than, I had seen when I had done the other Grand Tours. Also, we did these first 3 days in Denmark, and almost always when I've done a Grand Tour that starts out of the home country, it's always a big turnout, particularly when it's in a cycling country. Like when we started the Giro in 2016 in the Netherlands, it was incredible. But um, I don't think, and I've heard a lot of other pros saying this the last few days. I've never seen anything like I did the last few days in Denmark.
Really?
It was like, I'm not exaggerating, and it was millions of people on the side of the road.
Oh, that's crazy.
And I mean, of 200K, I think 180K was 5 to 10 deep of people.
Yeah.
And I remember, normally I don't put the radio on with the volume all the way up because then it's too loud. But even with the earpiece taped in and the volume all the way up, I still couldn't hear a lot of it on the radio. It was so loud all day.
I mean, I saw on one of those little climbs, like it looked like Alpe d'Huez, like it was just madness.
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, I think all of the country of Denmark was on the side of the road watching. And it was actually cool because not only from that side of it, but in a Grand Tour, you always show up a few days early to, you have tests before the race. And so normally you're there 3 days before. So we have some days training, and there's a lot of bike infrastructure. And actually we did the pre-race meeting with ASO with Christian Prudhomme. And he said that there are more bicycles per capita than any country in the world, and more people per capita going to work by bike than any country in the world.
Wow.
And it was really interesting, like out training, always the cars wait for the bikes.
Oh, that's cool.
You go in a roundabout and there's a bike path next to the roundabout, all the cars will stop and wait for the bike to pass, which in the US or in most places, we have to ride sort of defensively because you can't expect that the cars are going to stop for you. But clearly, in Denmark, it's really a part of their culture. And yeah, I mean, I guess just to say that often riders are grumbling about remote starts of Grand Tours because they don't like the extra transfer and whatever. But I think everyone was really enjoyed this start in Denmark and was super impressed with, the turnout was insane.
What was this, speaking of transfers, what was this transfer like for you? How did that shake out?
This one actually was really well organized. So the finish of the stage yesterday was actually only 5 minutes from like a private airport. From what I can see, I don't think there's any commercial flights that go there, but they had chartered planes for all the teams. I think there was 5 or 6 planes in total. We were with Quick Step, FDJ, and Bahrain on our plane. So we went to our bus, showered, sat on the bus for like 30 minutes, 5 minutes to the airport. There was no passport control or nothing. You just walked onto the plane. And then we landed in another small airport here in Calais. And then there was another bus waiting for us, picked us up, and then we were at the hotel in another 30 minutes. So, we were more or less finished the stage around 6 in Denmark, and we were at the hotel in France by 10.
And that's your hotel behind you? Looks terrible.
Yeah. It's the hotels you get in Grand Tours there's some that are like shockingly bad, and then some that are incredible. Anything from, like €30 a night budget places where, always like I was teammates for a few years with Pierre Roland, and some of these kind of budget hotels in France, like always it's 2 single beds, but touching each other and always want to separate the beds. But a lot of times the nightstands are like screwed into the wall, so you can't separate them. And I remember Pierre would always bring a screwdriver. His suitcase.
That's like a pro. That's a pro. Yeah.
But literally sometimes it's like we put one of the mattresses on the floor, and then it's like difficult to open 2 suitcases at once. So it can be anything from like frescoes on the ceiling, staying in a palace, to like a place you wouldn't want to stay.
Yeah. Who's your roommate?
I'm actually solo here.
Oh, nice.
In part because I got a little bit sick after Astana. Like 10 days, 2 weeks out from the tour. And I was a little bit given like the whole COVID situation in Swiss. I was a little bit nervous. But I did a test every day for 8 or 9 days, was always negative. And then I've done 2 PCRs as well. And then we did an antigen test today and it was always negative. So,
Nice.
um,
Were you solo in Denmark also then?
Yeah. They've just kept me in a solo room, which I prefer to be alone. So,
oh yeah. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Really?
So one thing that I'm curious about, you talked about, and I don't know if this was before we got on, but it's like stressful right now as things are getting sorted out in the Peloton. If you had to pick one person, it can be on your team or not on your team, that you want to ride near, who would it be? Who do you feel like the best around?
Days.
What's that?
Like for a stressful day?
Yeah.
That's a good question, actually.
I'm not going to ask you any questions that like the average. I don't want to ask like the total generic questions like the reporters after the race.
I'm not sure I can. I'll say based on this Giro that I did back in May, I can't actually stay with him because and to be honest, like most of my teammates, I don't think can either. But Nibali, he's never in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I mean, he is one of the best, and certainly among like GC riders, one of the best at putting himself always in the right place in the bunch. And I mean, if I had the same ability that he has to do that without, I mean, it's like, okay, I can stay there, but it costs me a lot of energy to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case with certainly most climbers. So yeah, I mean, if you have the skills that you can stay with some of these like classic specialists or sprinters, then you can save a lot because here's the thing is like climbers, we make the difference with legs on the climb. And yes, there's an element of positioning. Yes, you have to be able to descend, all these things. And everyone is a really good bike handler at the World Tour level. But then if you look at the classics, yes, you also make the difference with legs, but also you make a lot of the difference with positioning and being, I mean, quite frankly, being a bully,
Yeah.
like,
oh yeah.
I mean, if the road is only 6 riders wide going into the cobblestones and 200 riders want to be there and it's flat, I mean, you have to go elbows out. And it's not something that I can do. But yeah, I mean, if you have the ability,
who has the sharpest elbows then? Who do you not want to be near, or who will just like bully you out of the way? I know that. Don't worry about throwing anyone under the bus.
Yeah, you don't have to race tomorrow or anything.
Nikki Terpstra is known for that. I mean, if you've been watching the sprints in the Tour, Sagan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a day or two ago, there was a door that like totally closed on him and he just went right through it.
Yeah.
Which again, it's like, it's one of those things, it's 60K an hour. I mean, it's not that I can't physically do that, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I mean, I break.
How, at any given time, what percentage back in the Peloton are you?
It depends. To be honest, these first couple days, I've not been much at the front. Also, a little bit out of like just safety.
Yeah.
And I mean, these stages early on, while it looks pretty calm, to stay in the first 20 or 30 wheels is a lot of fighting. Because the top teams with, if you have Pogačar, you don't ever see Pogačar in the back,
Yeah.
These risk a crash or a split or whatever. And those headline guys have a whole team dedicated to keeping him there. So for me, it's like being there selectively when I need to be, which if it's helping the team and you need to be there, then you need to be there. If it's, for example, an opportunity for me where I can target a mountain stage, then, in the neutral, you need to be on the bumper of the red car. And it's like, as trivial as it sounds, it's like you can't let go of the bumper, because all of a sudden one wheel gets ahead of you, and then people start to see like, oh, I can get around this guy. And if you think in the Tour de France or in any Grand Tour, if it's a day that it's likely that the breakaway can win the stage because it's totally unclear who's going to control, or if for example Ineos has the jersey, or Jumbo or UAE, those three teams, they're not going to waste their energy every day to bring back the breakaway, even on mountain stages, because
Right.
they're there to win the GC, and it's a completely different race than from winning stages. So it's like, if we know that the breakaway has a chance to succeed, any rider that has a chance to win on that given parcours, it's like, if they have the freedom from their team to be there, I mean, you have to think like, it can be a life-changing event if you win in a Grand Tour,
Yeah.
especially if you win in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
It can change life.
Yeah.
So you need to, it's like I say, to be on the red bumper of the car, it's like you need to fight like all those other assholes that want to win the stage.
Yeah.
Because like, it's going to be elbows out.
It looks like a brawl sometimes, especially I watched pretty much every stage of the Giro start to finish this year, and it looked like some of those days were just slugfest to get the break to go, and it took like an hour. It's crazy.
Well, yeah. And I think because now we're racing faster and faster throughout the day, it disincentivizes the GC teams even more from controlling.
Yeah.
Because if the break is going to take 100 Ks to go, at some point, unless it takes so long for it to go that the break never establishes a big gap, then sometimes they'll ride. Because to control, if it only goes to 4 or 5 minutes and they can play for the stage win, okay. But some of these days, it's like, we race so fast and so aggressively all day that they recognize they're going to race a completely different race. And then it becomes this like sort of self-enforcing thing where it's like, then more guys start to see, well, no one's going to control the race, so anyone can win today. And like I say, like, if you can win in a Grand Tour, it's a big thing. And, everyone's going to be there to fight for that.
Are there, without telling us what it is, because you obviously want to keep some cards to your chest, are there any stages that you're specifically targeting, or are you guys still sort of letting things shake out?
So from our end, we have Lutsenko for GC. So I will be here to kind of support him for that in the mountains. But like, we also had Lopez and Nibali in the Giro, and that was kind of the same role I had there, to be with them in the mountain stages, but I still had my opportunities to kind of target stages. But I think that'll come later in the second and third week. I mean, there's a couple stages in the Pyrenees that stick out, like Hautecam, and also the day before to Périgueux, I think. Alpe d'Huez, of course. We start on Galibier. So it's hard to say. I mean, Alpe d'Huez is such a big day that you could see maybe GC teams wanting to control, because it certainly is like a prestige stage.
Yeah.
But, it starts on Galibier, so it could be a breakaway of strong climbers that gets in there, which is different than if we start on the flat. It's a bit more of a lottery to be in.
Right.
Because, I mean, on the climb, if you have the legs, then you can be there. But on the flat, unless it's like a really narrow road and the peloton can block the road, then you can find those key points where, okay, we pass through a small town, then cobbles, then a narrow road. So if I'm at the front and I can sneak away here, then maybe they'll block the road. But if it's a big road, it can go on forever. And it's not that you can follow 50 moves.
Right.
Follow 50 moves. Maybe you get in the breakaway and then you're dead. And it's like, well, the point isn't to be in the breakaway. The point is to be in the breakaway and then win.
Right.
So.
Um, so have you stopped and taken any nature breaks during the race so far this year?
Actually, I did an interview with Velanews yesterday at the start, and they asked me about that. But the thing is, like, there's so many fans in these first stages in Denmark. Like I say, it was like 180 of 200K. That it's like actually find a place where you can do it
Yeah.
and not be like, subject to indecent exposure is not. So yes, but it's definitely like you have to kind of wait for both a good moment in the race, but also a moment where there aren't people everywhere.
People. Yeah, yeah. And what's the tastiest thing you've eaten on the bike so far?
So the team basically we have a mix of like bars and gels, and drink mix, like, from nutrition company type stuff.
Yeah.
But then they also make everyday rice cakes, panini, which are like little sandwiches, like tiny ones with different like jam or banana or but they always stick ones in with Nutella and banana.
Yeah.
And that's always,
yeah.
I always like my left pocket is kind of like the slow period of the race pocket, where then I can savor something that's,
Nice.
tasty.
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Am I still
connection there? Yeah. We just lost connection for a sec. Well, cool, Chris. I feel like I've been like grilling him. What interesting questions have I left off?
That's a good question, because you've asked a lot of interesting questions, and I think you touched on some of them. Joe, when you and I talked maybe a month ago, you seemed like your role was going to be really defined as helping with new opportunities, but it sounds like maybe now you think that might change a little bit. So I think everyone will be happy to hear that. What about this week, the next few days? When do you guys hit the cobbles? Is it tomorrow or the day after?
So tomorrow is another flat stage, but we finish, or towards the end, we go along the coast. It's not the cobbled stage, but I was actually speaking with Moscon at dinner, and he was looking at the forecast and said something like there was wind up to 27 k's per hour and could be like crosstail. So that could be dangerous.
Is that tomorrow?
I think so. And I don't know how. I haven't looked a lot. I'm going to look on VeloViewer tonight and look at the street view. I don't know how open it is, if there's much coverage or not, but I think, I mean, it's always hard to say, right? Because everyone was talking about this bridge in Denmark, the famous like 17K long bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, we got onto the bridge and it was like block headwind.
Yeah.
So actually, it was like the only time probably ever in my life I've ridden like next to Sagan and Van Aert and all these guys, 6K to go in what's going to be a field sprint. And it probably will never happen again. What's up?
Is that your college roommate?
That's Lutsenko.
Looks like you went back to college or something at that place.
I meant like a prep school here. No, so it's yeah, I think it'll be potentially a pretty grippy tomorrow, and then the cobbles. Yeah, I mean, when you saw in 2014 when Nibali won the tour, it was like an explosion, but it was also bad weather. I don't think it's supposed to rain. When they did it more recently and it was dry, I don't think it was such a big gap in the GC. And then the first uphill finish is Planche de Belfi on stage 7. But it's actually super Planche de Belfi. So I think from where they normally stop, they do an extra 2K on dirt.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. The cobble day, do the cobbles come late or early in the stage? Where are they?
They're late.
Does that get impacted?
It's all at the finish. I'm not sure how far the last sector is from the finish, but it's 19K in total. So I mean, it's not Paris-Roubaix, it's not 57K, but still, it's enough to kind of wreak havoc. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Any people you've seen from home, Northern Virginia, DC area? I think you mentioned you saw some flags or signs.
Yeah.
Anybody you know?
Yeah. So my friends Gustav and Eve, who we all know, came down from Stockholm actually, and they were at the TT the first day. So I got to catch up with them. I actually got them some VIP passes to like the village. And yeah, there was also some people from DC, from I think High Road Cycling is the bike shop, maybe Georgetown. So I saw them at the TT. Then Justin Mock and his girlfriend Elizabeth are coming later in the race.
Nice.
And then also my wife Melitza and her dad are going to be at this stage in Alpe d'Huez. So that'll be cool. Yeah, and I don't know. I've heard from a few other people that they might be dropping by. So yeah, I mean, it's cool to kind of see people out on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I think someone told me you made page 17 of the Fauquier newspaper. So
yeah, they actually contacted me asking for permission to use a photo.
Nice.
Funny.
Well, at least they asked.
Yeah,
it's interesting though. You know, you've been doing this, you know, obviously a long time, and you won the U23 Giro, however many years that was ago. Facebook always reminds me once a year, you know, from the carousel post race. But after all these years, you know, my neighbors just yesterday, like, really seemed interested in understanding how the race worked from a time perspective, points perspective, like really trying to understand how it works, right? So I think it does, being in the tour is a whole different thing, just from a general public knowledge perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting, like you say. Like I never like, kind of like I said before, like I don't think from like a level perspective of racing it's really different. Like it's all kind of like the world tour and it's sort of the same guys, but there's this certain element of like the tour is the tour. And you know, I don't know, it just has this notoriety that I mean, even if I'm back in the US and I tell people what I do, and you always get this kind of look of confusion, and you're like, oh yeah, like the Tour de France, and like, oh okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it's what people know, and it's almost this thing that is bigger than the sport itself. And I guess arguably, if you look at like the power that ASO has and that the tour has, it really is. I mean, I would say the most powerful group or event in the sport is by far the tour, more so than the teams, than the UCI, than really anyone.
Yeah.
And
so much media.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Like it's like a, yeah. And I've seen that just from like messages I've received and like the attention you see on media, social media, but also, like I say, like the start in Denmark was just, I mean, it's sometimes there's certain elements of pro cycling that you feel like this is a bit amateur, but then when you see that, it's like, wow, this really does feel like the biggest sporting event in the world.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you remember, Joe, you know, Chris Romero, you know, Chris from New York, he's down here right now. And we were watching the stage the other day, and we were almost arguing over whether or not the sprint point was the finish of the race, because the crowd was so deep for so long, and like, and the banner and just it looked like a stage finish, and we couldn't decide if it was the end of the race or not. It was just unbelievable how many people, and just, yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And it's cool. Like, you know, that it's interesting too, in that I feel that here, one thing that is different from the Giro or the Vuelta is the people that come to the Giro or the Vuelta, I feel are really hardcore cycling fans, and you get big turnouts there too, but the people really know cycling. And I would say the tour is almost akin to like the Super Bowl in the US, where people have Super Bowl parties and everyone's watching, but it's not that everyone that goes to a Super Bowl party loves football. It's just kind of what you do, you know? And it's like, it's interesting even talking to like some of my neighbors in Nice, and, you know, to them, it's like summer kind of is the Tour de France, and they're not really cycling fans, but it's just like, that's just sort of the culture. And like, that's what happens in France in July. And, you know, it's just it's cool in the sense that, like I say, like it's bigger than the sport.
I think we only have a couple minutes left, and we definitely ran longer than I had anticipated, but you said you just finished dinner. What did you have for dinner tonight?
So I had, started with some soup, then a risotto and a pasta, salmon. And then I had like an apple. I also had some grilled vegetables and an apple tart for dessert. But
Did
actually,
they let you have seconds?
well, what's interesting is, I don't know if you guys know this, but like we have a chef that cooks all our food, but we also have 2 nutritionists that kind of calculate everything. And they send a message to each rider before each meal, just on WhatsApp, basically how many grams of each thing you're supposed to eat. So like for me, it was like 280 grams of risotto and 280 grams of pasta, plus like 30 grams of carbohydrate from like a simple sugar, which was like the apple tart. And then the protein is a little bit, it's more like about kind of getting the carb amount right based on what you did today, how you fueled today, and then what tomorrow is. And they kind of do that along with the doctor will check your weight every morning, and they also take a urine sample every morning to basically try and, I mean, what they want to see is that like you're always fueled properly, you're always hydrated properly, and that your weight is stable. Ideally, normally guys will go up like 1 kilo in the last week, but that's more just due to like overall inflammation. Kind of like you get so fatigued and there's like a bit of muscle damage and whatever by the last week, that it's sort of like if you fall down and bump your elbow, like it gets swollen.
Right.
And you get kind of the same thing the last week of a Grand Tour, like you'll hold more water just because you're so like tired and inflamed, I guess.
Yeah. Wild. Well, hey, is anything before we let him go?
Nope. Appreciate his time. It was interesting.
Yeah, thanks for taking so much time, Joe. Hopefully we can get you on the next rest day if things aren't too busy.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Riverside down.
Yeah, exactly. Have fun tomorrow.
Thanks. I'm not sure how much fun these next 2 stages are going to be, but
that's all right. Just be careful out there. Ride smart.
Okay. See you guys.
All right, buddy.
See you guys.
Bye.